Greetings and salutations, everyone, wherever you are in this wonderful domain, the realm that we live in. It's Robert Phoenix. This is the Astro Weather. And whether you are just awakening and beginning your day or whether you're winding down, I hope it will be an enlightening one, to say the least. Couldn't find my other glasses this morning, so I'm going with the Video Killed the Radio Stars frames and lenses today. But as long as I can see, I'm good. I'm good. I've been getting into more fixed star astrology, and some of that shit is really. I mean, I play with it. With the Behenian stars, Regulus, Aldebaran, um, Algol. The cast of characters, but there's so many fixed stars, and it's amazing. The definitions of the fixed stars are always fascinating because they're really like the definitions are really fixed, right? Like there's it's like some of them are just merciless when it comes to the not so great qualities of a fixed star, especially like sheet, Scheat, a nasty star if there was one. But there, I have I have one star that's I forget what it is. I have to go back and look it up. It's kind of obscure, but it's conjunct, I think, my Venus. I think my Venus is no. I think it might be conjunct Mercury in my chart. Anyway, it talks about having a lot of useless knowledge and information. I thought that's fucking perfect. Absolutely perfect. How is everybody? Greetings to you all. Got a lot of good feedback on the new intro, which surprised me. People really liked it, and I actually got a copyright claim on it. But it's not the end of the world because it's so funny. Well, the video has been demonetized. Well, I've been demonetized for a long time. And the company that owns the rights to that piece of music is either going to scrape the analytics, or if this is monetized by YouTube, they will get some of the monetization. And I don't blame them. I mean, they theoretically own the copyright to the music. What's ironic is I used to work for that company, and I'm sure that they don't even know that I'm using this piece of music. I mean, it was such an obscure piece of music. I didn't think it would really matter much. It's like Switched on Santa. When was the last time you ever heard Switched on Santa? Not me, and I know a lot about music. Anyway, I hope everybody's doing well. We have such a great chat here in the morning, and it's always a real blessing for my day to be able to start my day this way, so that I can hang out and talk with you and talk astrology. So one of the things that I wanted to offer up to people is, I have these thumbnails and these backgrounds, and I always try to use sunrise because I just think it's fitting for the tenor of the show. So if you have a sunrise picture that you've taken or would like to take, and you want me to use it on the show, I want you to send it to me, and I'm going to put my let's do this. I'm going to give you guys. I got a bunch of email addresses. I'm going to give you this one. If you have a sunrise photo you want to send to me, go ahead and send it to me at that email address right there, and I will give you attribution as well. So I'd be happy to use your sunrise photos. So there you go, little bit of interactivity with me and you. And all right, so I guess we should get going, start talking about things, huh? All right, let's do this. By the way, I do like the intro too. I think it's I think it's kind of goofy and fun. Did anybody watch the debate last night? I'm going to talk about what happened to Nikki Haley. Oh my God. Her powdered remains are still being swept up from the debate floor. Vivek did a number on her. And I'm not a huge Vivek guy, although I'm glad he's bringing these talking points, into the public. It's like conspiracy goes mainstream now. Everything that we have been working on and tunneling through over the past 20 years is now being spoken by Vivek Ramaswamy, who brings truth to power, according to Vivek. Here we go. The Astro Weather for today. The moon, right there. We had that shift, that lunar shift yesterday from Virgo to Libra. Looks like we got some good feedback on the 2 donut day. Somebody, I forget who, managed the 2 donut strategy and it worked out for them. Good for you. I'm glad to be of help. I'm a Virgo. That's what I'm supposed to do. What else can we talk about with this chart? Let's see. Well, let's talk about the moon in Libra. Libra isn't always balanced, but it strives to achieve balance. And as the moon moves through its lunar phase, it will get closer to the south node. I'm sorry, the south node is here. It will get closer to the south node, but also get closer in opposition to Chiron throughout the day. And, you know, when you get into a Chiron moon opposition, there can be embarrassment, right? There can be embarrassment. And it's usually when the individual puts themselves out there on an emotional level or in an emotional way, and that emotion is not met with the same kind of intent, right? So that's the moon Chiron opposition today. I would say be wary of casting pearls before swine. Now, if you do have to put yourself out there today, if you do have to have a fair and balanced reporting of what your emotional state is like, then by all means, do it, right? We've got Mars and the sun sextiling with the moon. You can make a good case for it. You can make a very good case for it. And you could take a risk as long as you stay fair and calm and balanced. I was on Twitter last night and you get into it. It's really funny. I was on a thread with S.J. Anderson, and who's a fantastic astrologer, by the way, really great. And we were talking about this Mars Cancer Leo cycle that's coming in 2024 and 2025, and it's reminiscent of 2 previous periods. There was this cycle like this during the Carter administration and when I was born, because I have Mars in Cancer. And that Mars in Cancer, forward and retrograde, it lasted a very long time from 1960 to 1961. So we were talking about Carter, and he wasn't even born during the Carter administration. So I was giving him a sense as to what was going on then. And we were looking at parallels for where it might be going. And one of the things that I brought up was petroleum and how OPEC made it very difficult for Americans during that time to get gas. Well, it's funny, United States was a member of OPEC, which is like, how do you square that? But that's a different story. We don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but I was trying to share with SJ that back in the day we had gas rationing and lines, and every other day would be like if your license plate ended in a odd number or even number, that was your day to get gas. It was so fucking weird. It was like this forced austerity. Interest rates were through the roof, 17 to 21%. We had shitty cars. The 70s were all about all these hardcore missions, and they hadn't figured out the technology so that you could have emission control and not sacrifice power and performance and things like that. They eventually figured it out, but the 70s was basically an R&D lab and a bunch of shitty cars. There's a term for the 70s called the 70s malaise in the automobile industry. It doesn't really come around and get itself fixed until the 80s. So I was talking about all these things, and I was talking about how there are echoes of it, inflation, and then fuel, and then Iran. Iran plays a big role in the Carter era, right? And it all starts with the end of the Carter era, getting rid of the Shah, bringing in the Ayatollah, the hostage crisis, the failed hostage rescue, everything that torpedoes the Carter re-election campaign. And so all those things are kind of present now, or will be. So I brought it up about petroleum, and this guy came in and he started to scold me about how, you know, the petroleum in this country has never been more robust, like record up. And you know what? I went online and I looked at it, and he's right. Right? This is wild. And and this gets into the Libra moon, and I'll share why. So what's happened is that Biden has killed all the new leases in Alaska, and he shut down pipelines. And what it's forced the industry to do is it's forced the industry to be more efficient with its existing wells. Because normally what they would do is they would hit a well or and you know and or a shale reserve, and then you know they would pump the chemicals and the water in, and they'd frack it. And apparently fracking, and look, wherever you are in this situation, I'm not pro or con, although I would rather drive a car with gas and electric car, but that's another story. Even fracking has gotten better, right? Like they figured out how, I mean, this is the weird thing about, I was just talking about the automobile industry. All those cars were shit. You know, you had exploding Pintos, and you had Vegas whose engine blocks were aluminum. They were just melting. They were just creating that stuff, building it, and then R&Ding it in real time on people's dimes. And the same thing can be said for fracking. Anyway, what they've done is instead of sort of hitting a well and then tapping it, and then you're hitting another one and another one and another one, you're spending more time with the wells that they've already hit, and they've figured out ways to be more efficient and extract more petroleum from their existing wells. It's kind of interesting, and I didn't know that, right? I didn't know that until I kind of dug in a little bit, and because gas is really cheap here right now. It's about $2.49 a gallon. I'm sorry, California. So I put it out on the tweet, and I said, "Hey, I just looked it up, and apparently, in spite of all of Biden's regulations, the industry has recalibrated and is staying with these existing wells and expanding their production versus trying to expand and have new production." And I learned something, and I threw it out on that tweet because you get into Twitter. Sometimes you get into these Twitter beefs, and everybody, you got to win. Like you just got to win. You got to find a way to win, right? And I'm like, nah, let me find a way to have this conversation sort of close the loop. And it was clear the guy was going after me, right? Close the loop in the conversation. Tell the guy, hey, you're right. And I found out that this is how they're doing it, right? So what does he do? He agrees with S.J. Anderson on one of the things that he said. It was fascinating, right? It was kind of like, I'm not going to give this guy any quarter, but this other guy, I'll give you that. That makes sense to me. So it was an interesting exercise in the Libra moon. It's a long, roundabout way to figure out like fair balance, fair balance, fair balance. How do we find a win-win? How do I get out of this Twitter beef? How do I save face? How do I find out or share that I learned something? And I wouldn't have learned it had I not had that interaction with somebody who was pretty aggressive with me on Twitter and who knew their stuff, right? So there's a Libra moon, and again, we get into some of that moon opposition with Chiron right there, where it's like, okay, well, it's not the worst thing in the world, and again, the thing with Chiron is if you can admit, and this is hard in Aries, if you can admit you were wrong with Chiron, it's so much better, right? It is so much better because the more that you double down and say, well, it's this or it's that, or this is why this happened, or this is what, and I'm not moving off my position, the worse it gets. Just admit your mistake, which is what Chiron is good for. Admit your mistake. Understand the mistake. Understand it, especially in Aries. We've had this really long run in Chiron and Aries. Oh my God. Are we refining our ability to be human? Aries is about being human. It was an interesting night on Twitter last night. A little late night run. Anyway, and there's another story there too. I'm not getting into it though. So this is a good day for a fair and balanced approach. We talked about the Mercury Moon square as well. It's a bit more in effect today than it was yesterday. Although by the time we get into that this afternoon, later in the evening, the moon is starting to separate and moving out of that square. And Mercury Moon squares are essentially not trusting your instincts, right? Mercury is theoretically logical, rational. Well, this is how it works. This is how it's going to go. This is the map. This is the plan. And the moon is instinctual. And when you get into a moon Mercury square, it's a conflict between instinct and the mind or the brain. And so they're meeting together, right? Loggerheads. So you get to work out today. And Libra's a very mental. It's a very mental sign. All the air signs are mental. And the moon in Libra, which I have in my chart, it's an interesting moon, right? So when I want to feel what somebody else is feeling, I create a picture in my head about what it must feel like, right? That's how I operate emotionally through the moon in Libra. It's not watery. It's like I'm not overcome with emotion. But if I can picture what that person is going through, it can elicit an emotional response. So it's a really interesting exercise in, sort of putting myself in somebody else's shoes, which the moon in Libra can be good at doing. And you can do that today, right? If you don't want to get caught up in a wave of emotion, create the picture in your mind. Well, how does that other person feel? Or how is that impacting this other person? In some ways, it's a I wouldn't call it safe, but it's a way to try something on. It's a way to try something on and see how it fits or see how it feels. But it's all, it's kind of all up here because that's how all the air signs are. They're mental, right? And so when we have this moon square to Mercury, which we talked about again yesterday, once you get the picture, you should be able to articulate what you're feeling. We have a bit of a T-square going on too. Mercury comes in and starts to square Chiron. Well, it's a very interesting time in terms of the astrology of, these cardinal signs, right? And Mercury is going to come more into square with Chiron. Now that on a collective level is aggression, war, and it's going to be really fascinating when Mercury goes retrograde. I think it's going to go retro. It goes retrograde in the 23rd. So we can do the math on that. That's 16 days out, right? 16 days out. So 16 days. So that's 22 degrees Capricorn. So it's going to start to go retrograde. I'm pretty sure that's it. It does go back into, here, I got to find out. Your boy has to be exact. Let me see what we got here. All right. As a professional astrologer, you have to have standards. Okay, Mercury goes retrograde on the 13th. My bad. It's a 1-3, not a 2-3. See, it pays to be detail oriented. All right, so it goes retrograde at 8 degrees. So it is in square with Chiron. It is in square with Chiron. So this is going to be interesting, especially when it comes to war talk and all these people who are just absolute whores for the military industrial complex. And then going retro. Man, I'm looking forward to this Mercury retrograde. I really am, because it's going to retrograde back into Sagittarius, and there are going to be a bunch of people caught with their pants down, and lots of retreating and lots of trying to justify what they had once said. Oh, it's going to be delicious, especially when it comes to politics. Mars is starting to separate from Saturn now. The Sun clearly separated from Saturn. And we got this tag team, this big tag team. You know, what's interesting is The Rock has been showing up in Washington, D.C. And there was talk many years ago. There's this movie called Tales from the Southland, which is this very weird movie. It's really weird. And I have to watch it again. I remember trying to watch it when it was out on DVD after it did the theaters. It's very surreal. But it's in that movie where this is a long time ago, where there was this guy who was doing cinematic decodes on YouTube. And we're talking like 2011, right around, actually 2010, 2011, when people started to do this on YouTube. And it was through that movie that he came to this conclusion that The Rock would be president one day. And then, lo and behold, as we move forward in time, you know, he's at the White House. He's meeting with the DOD. And we have Uranus and Jupiter in Taurus. And of course, The Rock is a Taurus, right? So I'm bringing it up because of Mars and the Sun in Sagittarius, and this idea of the military and expanding the idea of the military. And wouldn't you want this, you know, big macho Camacho, President Camacho for president? No, I wouldn't. But the powers that be will do anything in order to find the most populist candidate for the people. All right. We'll call it the Gavin Newsom backup plan. Venus still in square with Pluto. The ride or die is still in effect, for better or worse. Dedication to the end with Venus, Pluto square. Watch your finances. Watch your resources. Keep an eye on where your money is going. Anything else here? Venus, Saturn. We got this nice Venus, Saturn trine. Longevity and commitment in your most important relationships is on the table as well. Very interesting around relationship. Think long-term. All right. Let's get into our True Hemp Science Star of the Day. And that would be none other than Mr. Tom Waits. Let me bring this down here. There we go. Let me do a little presentation here. Share the screen. There it is. Let me get my banner up. Okay, so Mr. Tom Waits. What do we know about him, and what can we derive from his chart? Well, he's a 12th house sun, right? You don't know a lot about Tom Waits, and he's been incredibly reclusive over the last decade. A very private guy, has 3 children, and basically found a soulmate in Kathleen Brennan. And it's very interesting because he has this Moon-Uranus conjunction. Relationships, by and large, are weird for him. They're not steady. He's lovers with Bette Midler, Ricky Lee Jones, right? These kind of very interesting, powerful, different women. But he's working with Coppola on a music score, and he meets this woman, Kathleen Brennan, and she becomes his soulmate, right? Venus, Jupiter conjunction, 2nd house. And she becomes so influential in his career. She helps him write his songs. Like some of Tom Waits goes through this transition period where he goes from, kind of the boozy, jazzy spoken word stuff to getting into, much more avant-garde material. And it's through his wife, Kathleen Brennan. that he discovers a lot of this. He becomes a big fan of the American composer Harry Parch. Becomes a big Captain Beefheart fan. Dada, Kurt Weill, like all this stuff happens, and it happens through relationship. Like this incredibly important relationship with his life. The other thing about Tom Waits that I think is interesting is Pluto in his 8th house, the underworld. And it's Pluto in Leo, and he's got that trine with Mercury. And it feels to me like that trine allows him to channel these kind of Bukowski-like characters that he was fascinated by. Right? For Tom Waits, those were the real people. And he's a Sagittarius, and he's going to, he's very big into the honesty and the truth of art, right? And he's also very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? He did lack confidence, a lot of confidence with his material. Like he was very insecure in a lot of ways. And you can see this with this moon Neptune square in his chart. Like it took him a long time to really believe in what he was doing. And his wife and his partner, Venus Jupiter conjunction, Moon Uranus, there's a lot of Uranian themes in his chart, relationship wise. It's a pivotal moment for him because he has this ground, right? And he has the true note in Aries, so he's supposed to be a domestic character. Like performing for Tom Waits was challenging in a lot of ways, but he got very good at it because he started to create these sets. And he has Neptune up here in the 10th house, so he's incredibly creative, right? It's almost like, he gets into Kurt Weill, and his music takes on almost like a three-penny opera kind of vibe. And he's also he's an actor. He's been in a lot of movies, and Neptune rules cinema, and he's got it right up there at the top of his chart. Now, he did marry somebody from another country. She's Kathleen Brennan is Irish, and he would spend a lot of time in Ireland. Hello, 9th house, right? And has some interesting, I think, connections, and clearly through another person, some roots there. But the 9th house is also publishing, and Tom Waits did make a fair amount of money with other people performing his songs. Old 55, which was done by the Eagles, netted him a fair amount of money. Bruce Springsteen's done covers of the songs. So publishing has been good to Tom Waits. The other thing is that he and Kathleen Brennan, anytime any company has gone after, has used his image or likeness or something related to his voice, which is very distinct, they have sued them and they have won. Right? There's only one case where he didn't completely prevail, and it was somebody that he had a contract with in Europe. But there was, I think it was a McDonald's commercial where they used his voice, or somebody like his voice. That's all 9th house stuff, right? That's all law. And, with Sagittarius here on the ascendant, boy, oh boy, oh boy, dogged, determined, and then reclusive, right? What do we really know about Tom Waits? Not a lot more than I just shared with you. Anyway, that is your true Hemp Science star of the day, Mr. Tom Waits. A great musical talent, enigmatic, funny as hell, and really a true American treasure as an artist. Now, speaking of treasure, if you want to treasure your body, all you got to do is spend $100 or more at our good friend Chris's TrueHempScience.com site, and you will get a goodie bag with your $100 order. And the goodie bag is great. You'll get lots of really cool little vials, and you'll get a gummy or two thrown in. You'll love it. $150 more gets you free shipping, and there's always a 30-day money-back guarantee. TrueHempScience.com. All right. That's going to do it for today. Thank you for being here. We'll be over on 15 minutes on Boxcast, and we'll be breaking down the Republican debate and more. Thank you all. Take good care. Have a great day.